High Commander Zoltar pressed a talon against the observation glass and watched Earth spin below, blue and undefended. "Humans break easy," he said, his voice a purr of certainty. Behind him, the human engineer, small, silent, her coveralls oil-stained, adjusted a circuit panel and said nothing. He didn't know she'd already locked onto his command codes. He didn't know that in 3 minutes, his entire fleet would answer to her. The bridge of the Talon's edge hummed with the confidence of 1,000 victories. Zoltar's officers stood at their stations, shoulders back, scales gleaming under the amber overhead lights. The flagship was the crown jewel of the Drexian armada, sleek, predatory, bristling with railguns and energy lances. It had subjugated 16 worlds in the past cycle alone. Earth, the Admiralty believed, would be 17. Commander Zoltar himself was a monument to Drexian might. Nearly 8 feet tall, his segmented exoskeleton shimmered with ceremonial etchings that told of past campaigns. His eyes, multifaceted and cold, swept the bridge like searchlights. He had requested a human technician weeks ago, a gesture of theater more than necessity. The Drexian fleet didn't need human expertise, but parading a conquered species aboard the command ship sent a message. It reminded the crew, and the galaxy, that resistance was futile. The human's name was Corporal Elara Voss. She'd been pulled from a supply depot on Europa, handed a toolkit and told to make herself useful. No one had asked if she was willing. No one cared. She was short by Drexian standards, her dark hair pulled into a practical bun, her hands quick and scarred from years of field repairs. She wore the coveralls of a systems engineer, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a data pad clipped to her belt. She moved through the bridge like a shadow, her presence barely acknowledged. Zoltar glanced at her now, where she knelt beside an interface panel near the secondary comms array. "Tell me, human," he said, his voice carrying the casual cruelty of someone who expected no real answer. "Do you understand what you witnessed today?" Elara didn't look up. Her fingers danced across a haptic screen, pulling up diagnostic readouts. "Routine maintenance, sir." The comms relay was showing a lag spike. He chuckled, a clicking rasp that made his subordinates stiffen. "I mean the greater truth. Your world is minutes from annexation. We could have glassed the surface, but the Council prefers a softer approach. Occupation. Integration. Your leaders will bend or they will be replaced. Either way, humanity joins the Drexian fold." He turned back to the viewport, talons folding behind his back. "You should feel honored. We do not invite servants aboard the edge lightly." Elara tightened a connection and closed the panel. "I'll try to appreciate it, sir." One of the junior officers, a slender Drexian named Corvus, hissed softly in amusement. "She has spirit, for livestock." Elara said nothing. She moved to the next station, her toolkit slung over one shoulder. Inside, her pulse hammered. She'd spent the last 2 weeks studying every interface on this ship, memorizing power flows, access nodes, security protocols. The Drexians were arrogant. They assumed no one would dare challenge them aboard their own flagship. That arrogance was a crack she intended to widen. The Talon's edge was not alone. Through the viewport, Elara could see the rest of the armada, 47 warships arranged in a crescent formation around Earth's orbit. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, fast attack corvettes, each one bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. The plan was simple, a show of overwhelming force, followed by a demand for surrender. If Earth's government refused, the bombardment would begin within the hour. Zoltar checked a readout on his command throne. "Status. All ships report ready, Commander," said his first officer, a veteran named Thrax. "Ground forces are prepared for deployment. We await your signal." "Good." Zoltar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. He touched a control and a holographic display bloomed above the bridge, a tactical map of Earth marked with key cities. "We will start with the capitals, a surgical strike to demonstrate our reach. Then we broadcast terms, simple, effective." Elara knelt at a maintenance hatch near the base of the command throne. She pulled a panel free and connected her data pad to a fiber optic line. On the screen, lines of code scrolled past. She'd been working on this for days, a backdoor buried so deep in the system architecture that the Drexians' own security sweeps had missed it. It was elegant, really. A cascade exploit that piggybacked on the ship's own command verification protocols. Once activated, it would grant her root access to the entire fleet's fire control network. Her hands were steady. She entered the final string of commands and held her breath. A soft chime confirmed the connection. Elara closed her eyes for just a moment, then stood. "Comms relay is green, sir." No more lag. Zoltar didn't even glance her way. "Efficient, perhaps we will keep you." She allowed herself a thin smile. "You might not want to." He turned, one eye swiveling toward her. "What did you say?" "I said I'll check the environmental controls next." Her voice was flat, cooperative, just making sure everything runs smooth for the big moment. Zoltar snorted and returned his attention to the viewport. "See that you do." Elara moved toward the rear of the bridge, her data pad tucked under one arm. Inside, her heart was a war drum. The exploit was live. The fleet's weapons, shields, and navigation were now hers to command. But she needed the right moment, something loud, public, impossible to walk back. She needed Zoltar to give her the opening. She didn't have to wait long. "Activate the broadcast array," Zoltar ordered. "Let them hear our terms." Thrax nodded and touched a console. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing a feed from Earth's surface. A United Nations Assembly Hall, packed with diplomats. Zoltar's voice would echo across every channel, every frequency. It was theater, domination in real time. Elara slipped her data pad from her belt and tapped a sequence. On her screen, the fleet's command structure appeared, a web of nodes, each one a ship, each one now vulnerable. She selected the flagship first, isolating its weapons array. Then she cued the same command across the entire armada. Zoltar began to speak, his words a blend of menace and magnanimity. "People of Earth, I am High Commander Zoltar of the Drexian Armada. You are witnessing the dawn of a new era. Surrender your sovereignty and you will be spared. Resist," and Elara pressed execute. Every gun on the Talon's edge pivoted inward, targeting the bridge. Alarms shrieked. Red light flooded the command deck. Zoltar's voice cut off mid-sentence. He spun toward his officers, mandibles flaring. "What is this?" Thrax's claws flew over his console. "Weapons lock, internal fault, I can't override." Elara stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "That's because they're not faulting. They're obeying." Every eye on the bridge turned to her. Zoltar's exoskeleton flexed, a predatory tension rippling through his frame. His eyes fixed on Elara, each facet gleaming with a blend of disbelief and rage. "What have you done?" Elara held her data pad in plain sight, her thumb hovering over the screen. "I reprogrammed your fleet. Every weapons system, every shield relay, every navigation protocol. They all answer to me now." She tilted her head, her voice steady. "You wanted a demonstration of reach, Commander. Here it is." Corvus lunged toward her, claws extended, but Elara tapped a command. A low hum filled the bridge as the flagship's internal defense turrets, normally dormant during standard operations, swiveled from their ceiling mounts and locked onto the junior officer. He froze mid-step. "Don't," Elara said quietly. "I'm not interested in bloodshed, but I will defend myself." Zoltar raised a talon, signaling Corvus to stand down. The officer retreated, his breath hissing through clenched mandibles. The High Commander's voice dropped to a growl. "You are one human on a ship of 200 Drexians. You think this ends well for you. I think it ends the way I choose." Elara tapped her data pad again, and the tactical display above the command throne flickered. The holographic map shifted, showing the positions of all 47 ships in the Armada. Each one now bore a red warning symbol. "Right now, your dreadnoughts are targeting each other. Your cruisers have locked railguns on your command carriers. If anyone tries to fire on Earth, their own fleet will tear them apart. Thrax was frantically working his console, his claws a blur. She's isolated our command keys, rerouted the verification matrix. This shouldn't be possible. It wasn't, Elara said. Until I made it possible. You let me walk around this ship for 2 weeks, fixing your systems, earning your trust. You never thought to ask what else I might be doing. Zoltar's mandibles clicked in a rhythm that might have been laughter or fury. Clever, suicidal but clever. You realize you cannot hold this position. The moment you lower your guard, we will retake control. Maybe. Elara's eyes didn't waver. But by then, your admiralty will have seen what happened here. They'll know a single human engineer dismantled your command structure from the inside. They'll ask how that's possible, and they'll start wondering what else we're capable of. A long silence stretched across the bridge. Outside the viewport, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware of the standoff taking place in orbit. The rest of the fleet hung in formation, frozen by Elara's exploit, their crews likely scrambling to understand why their systems had turned against them. Zoltar stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over her. You are stalling, hoping for rescue. It will not come. I'm not stalling. Elara gestured to the viewport. I'm giving you a choice. Call off the invasion, withdraw your fleet, or I start firing. On your own world, on your ships. She brought up a targeting overlay, starting with this one. I can vent the bridge to vacuum in 3 seconds, or I can detonate the reactor core in 30. Either way, you lose. Thrax's voice cracked. Commander, she has root access. She could do it. Zoltar's eyes narrowed. You would die with us. Yes. Elara's voice was ice. But I'd take your flagship, your reputation, and your career with me, and Earth would still be here. That's a trade I'm willing to make. For the first time, Zoltar hesitated. It was a brief flicker, a crack in his certainty, but Elara saw it. She pressed the advantage. Here's what happens next, she said, her tone shifting from confrontation to negotiation. You open a channel to the Admiralty. You tell them the invasion is off. You claim a technical malfunction, a miscalculation, whatever lie keeps you alive. Then you turn this fleet around and leave. If you do that, I'll release control. No one has to die. Corvus hissed. You expect us to retreat because one human made a threat. I expect you to retreat because your commander values his life. Elara looked directly at Zoltar, and because deep down he knows I'm not bluffing. Zoltar's gaze held hers for a long moment. Then he turned to Thrax. Open a secure line to Fleet Command, route it through my personal encryption. Thrax's claws hesitated over the console. Sir, do it. The officer complied. A holographic screen materialized, showing the stern face of Admiral Kryn, a high-ranking Drexian with scars crisscrossing her exoskeleton. Her eyes flicked to Zoltar, then to the chaotic readouts behind him. Zoltar, your fleet is broadcasting distress codes. Explain. Zoltar's mandibles tightened. We have encountered an unforeseen complication. A systems failure has compromised fleet coordination. I am recommending a tactical withdrawal until the issue is resolved. Kryn's gaze sharpened. A failure. Your flagship is the most secure vessel in the armada. What kind of failure? A human one, Elara said, stepping into view of the hologram. Kryn's eyes widened just a fraction. And you are Corporal Elara Voss, systems engineer, also the person currently holding your entire invasion force hostage. Elara held up her data pad. I've locked your ships into a mutual targeting matrix. If any vessel attempts to fire on Earth, the rest will respond in kind. If you try to override my commands, I'll detonate the flagship's reactor and take half your fleet with me. Kryn's voice was pure venom. You would not dare. Try me. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Kryn's eyes shifted to Zoltar. Is this true? Zoltar's voice was strained. She has demonstrated control of our weapon systems. I cannot verify the extent, but the threat is credible. Kryn's claws drummed against an unseen surface. "This is unacceptable. Zoltar, you will regain control of your ship, immediately." "I'm trying," Zoltar said through gritted mandibles. "She has buried herself too deep. We need time. Time is not a resource we have." Kryn's tone turned cold. "If you cannot secure your vessel, I will authorize a remote override." Elara's pulse spiked, but she kept her voice level. "Go ahead. But the moment you try, I'll trigger the reactor. You'll lose your flagship, your high commander, and any chance of salvaging this operation." She met Kryn's gaze through the hologram. "Or you can accept that you underestimated us. You can withdraw, regroup, and maybe, just maybe, rethink your strategy." Kryn's eyes bored into her. "You are one human who outsmarted your best ship." Elara's voice hardened. "Imagine what the rest of us could do if you gave us a reason." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Then she looked at Zoltar. "Stand down. Withdraw the fleet to the outer perimeter. We will reassess." Zoltar's shoulders sagged just slightly. "Understood." The line went dark. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship systems. Zoltar turned back to Elara, his voice low and dangerous. "You have bought your world a reprieve. Enjoy it while it lasts." "I will," Elara said. "Now order the withdrawal." Zoltar moved to his command throne and issued the orders. One by one, the ships of the armada began to pull back, their engines flaring as they broke formation and climbed toward higher orbit. The earth below remained untouched. Elara exhaled slowly, her hands trembling just a little. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. But as the fleet began to disperse, she knew this wasn't over. The Talon's edge was still hers, but Elara could feel the tension coiling tighter with every passing minute. The Drexian officers moved through their duties with mechanical precision, their eyes flicking toward her whenever they thought she wasn't looking. Zoltar had returned to his command throne, his posture rigid, his silence more dangerous than any threat he could voice. He was waiting for her to make a mistake, for her grip to slip, for the smallest opening. Elara couldn't afford to give him one. She stood near the main console, her data pad clutched in one hand, the other resting on the edge of a control panel. The exploit was still active, but she knew it was fragile. The Drexians were already probing for weaknesses, running diagnostic sweeps, testing the limits of her access. Thrax was the most persistent, his claws tapped rhythmically at his station, his eyes locked on cascading lines of code. He was good. "Too good, Commander," Thrax said quietly, his voice pitched just low enough that Elara had to strain to hear. "I have located the primary intrusion node. If I can isolate it, do nothing," Zoltar interrupted, his voice sharp. "Not yet." Thrax's mandibles twitched in frustration, but he obeyed. Zoltar's gaze remained fixed on the viewport, where the armada was still pulling back in a slow, orderly retreat. He was calculating, weighing his options. Elara could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his talons drummed against the armrest of his throne. "Tell me, Corporal Voss," Zoltar said, his tone conversational but edged with steel. "What is your exit strategy?" Elara didn't answer immediately. She was running her own calculations, trying to figure out how long she could maintain control before the Drexians found a way around her safeguards. The exploit was elegant, but it wasn't invincible. Every second she held the fleet hostage increased the chance of a counterstrike. "I'll release control once you're far enough from Earth," she said finally. "Once I'm sure you won't turn around the moment I let go." "And if I give you my word?" Elara almost laughed. "Your word isn't worth much, Commander. You were about to burn my planet an hour ago." Zoltar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Fair, but consider this. Holding us here indefinitely is not sustainable. You are one human, sleep-deprived, surrounded by enemies. Eventually you will falter, and when you do I will not be merciful. Then I guess I'd better not falter." A soft chime sounded from Thrax's console. The officer stiffened, his claws freezing mid-motion. "Commander," Fleet Command is attempting a remote access override. They're bypassing our local systems entirely. Elara's stomach dropped. She pulled up her data pad and saw it immediately. A new intrusion attempt coming from outside the Talon's edge, threading through the fleet's command network like a surgical knife. It was Kryn. The Admiral was trying to take back control without Zoltar's help. Elara's fingers flew across the screen, deploying countermeasures, firewall protocols, anything to slow the override. But Kryn's team was fast. Too fast. They were peeling back her defenses layer by layer, reclaiming nodes, severing her access points. "She's in," Thrax said, his voice tight with restrained triumph. 30 seconds until full override. Zoltar stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow over Elara. "Your gambit is over, Corporal. Step away from the console." Elara's mind raced. She had one card left, one last move that would either save Earth or doom her. She pulled up the fleet-wide targeting matrix and set a new parameter. If the override completed, every ship would fire on the flagship simultaneously. It was a scorched earth strategy, a final act of defiance. If she couldn't hold the fleet, she'd destroy its center. 20 seconds, Thrax said. Elara looked up at Zoltar. "If that override finishes, this ship dies, and you die with it." Zoltar's eyes narrowed. "You are bluffing." "Am I?" She held up the data pad, showing him the targeting overlay. "I told you before, I'm willing to make that trade." For a heartbeat, Zoltar said nothing. Then he turned to Thrax. "Abort the override." Thrax's claws hesitated. "Sir, abort it, now." The officer's mandibles flared in protest, but he complied. His claws danced across the console, sending a priority command to Fleet Command. The intrusion attempt slowed, then stopped. Kryn's override dissolved, leaving Elara's exploit intact. Thrax exhaled slowly, his breath hissing through clenched mandibles. "Admiral Kryn will not be pleased." "She can lodge a complaint with my corpse," Zoltar said flatly. He turned back to Elara. "You have spine, human, I will grant you that, but this cannot continue. You are exhausted. Your hands are shaking. Sooner or later you will make a mistake." Elara wanted to deny it, but he was right. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges, fatigue pressing down on her like a weight. She'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and it was finally catching up. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "A bargain." Zoltar stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Release control of the fleet. In exchange, I will guarantee your safe passage off this ship. No retaliation. No pursuit. You return to Earth and we withdraw to our staging grounds. Both sides walk away. And then you come back in a month with reinforcements. Perhaps, but that is a problem for another day. Today you have a choice. Hold this line until you collapse or take the win and leave." His eyes gleamed. "I am offering you a chance to survive, Corporal. I suggest you take it." Elara looked at the viewport, where Earth hung serene and untouched. She thought of the billions of people below, unaware that their lives had just been bartered in a standoff aboard an alien warship. She thought of the risk she'd taken, the line she'd crossed, and she thought of what would happen if she let go. "One condition," she said. Zoltar's mandibles twitched. "Name it. You broadcast a message to your entire fleet. You tell them what happened here. You tell them a human engineer took control of your flagship and held you hostage. No excuses, no cover-up, just the truth." Zoltar's eyes burned with barely suppressed rage. "You ask me to humiliate myself. I ask you to tell the truth. If you want me to let go, that's the price." For a long moment, Zoltar stared at her. Then slowly he nodded. "Agreed." He moved to the communications console and opened a fleet-wide channel. Every ship in the armada would hear this. Every crew member, every officer. His voice was steady, but Elara could hear the strain beneath it. "This is High Commander Zoltar. I am issuing a Priority 1 update. Today, a human systems engineer infiltrated our command network and successfully took control of the Talon's edge and the surrounding fleet. She held us hostage for over 2 hours, neutralizing our offensive capabilities and forcing a tactical withdrawal. This breach was possible due to lapses in our security protocols and overconfidence in our supremacy. He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. Let this serve as a reminder: underestimate humanity at your peril. The channel closed. The bridge was silent. Elara nodded slowly. Thank you. She pulled up her data pad and began the shutdown sequence. One by one, she released the ships from her control, unlocking targeting systems, restoring command protocols, severing her access. It took 3 minutes. When it was done, the fleet was theirs again. Zoltar gestured to Corvus. Escort the corporal to the shuttle bay. Provide her with a transport pod. No interference. Corvus looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. Elara followed him off the bridge, her legs unsteady, her heart still hammering. Behind her she heard Zoltar's voice, quiet but clear. I will remember you, Corporal Voss. She didn't look back. The shuttle bay was cavernous, its walls lined with maintenance scaffolding and docked fighters. Elara walked beside Corvus, her toolkit slung over one shoulder, her data pad tucked into her belt. The Drexian officer said nothing, his claws clicking against the metal deck with each step. He didn't have to speak, his body language said everything. He was furious, humiliated, and barely restraining himself. They reached a small transport pod, a sleek ovoid craft designed for short-range transit. Corvus keyed open the hatch and stepped aside, his eyes burning into her. You should have died on that bridge. Probably, Elara said. She climbed into the pod and strapped herself into the pilot's seat. The controls were Drexian, but she'd studied their interfaces enough to manage. Thanks for the ride. Corvus's mandibles flared. Do not mistake this for mercy. The commander spared you because it suited his interests. Next time you will not be so fortunate. Next time maybe you won't invade. Elara sealed the hatch and fired up the engines. The pod lifted smoothly, its repulsors humming as it rotated toward the bay's exit. Through the cockpit glass, she saw Corvus watching her, his claws clenched at his sides. The pod shot out into space. Elara exhaled slowly, her hands trembling as she gripped the controls. Behind her, the Talon's edge hung like a predator in the void, its hull scarred and imposing. The rest of the armada was still pulling back, their formation breaking apart as they climbed toward higher orbit. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Earth filled the viewport, blue and green and breathtaking. Elara set a course for the nearest orbital station and let the autopilot take over. Her body felt heavy, exhaustion crashing over her in waves now that the adrenaline was fading. She leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes. Her comm unit crackled. Unidentified transport, this is Earth Defense Station Delta 7. Identify yourself. Elara opened her eyes and reached for the comm. This is Corporal Elara Voss, United Earth Engineering Corps, requesting docking clearance and immediate debrief. There was a pause, then a different voice came through, sharper, more authoritative. Corporal Voss, this is General Amari. We've been tracking the Drexian fleet. What the hell just happened up there? Elara allowed herself a faint smile. I convinced them to leave, sir. Convinced them? How? With a really good exploit and a lot of nerve. Another pause. Get to the station. We need a full report. Yes, sir. The line went quiet. Elara guided the pod toward the station, a rotating ring of metal and glass that gleamed in the sunlight. As she approached, she saw other ships docked along its outer rim, defense frigates, supply haulers, a few civilian transports. Normal life, continuing as if the world hadn't just come within minutes of annihilation. She docked the pod and stepped out into the station's central hub. The artificial gravity felt strange after hours aboard the Talon's edge, and her legs wobbled slightly as she walked. A security detail met her at the airlock, 2 Marines in full combat gear, their faces tense but respectful. Corporal, one of them said. General Amari is waiting in the command center. Elara nodded and followed them through the station's corridors. Around her, people moved with purpose, Technicians, officers, civilians. No one seemed to know what had happened yet. The news would spread soon enough. The command center was a circular room dominated by a holographic display of Earth and its surrounding orbital space. General Amari stood at the center, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the retreating Drexian fleet. She was a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair and a scar running along her jawline. She turned as Elara entered. "Corporal Voss," Amari said. Her voice was level, but Elara could hear the questions beneath it. "Explain." Elara stood at attention despite her exhaustion. "I was assigned to the Drexian flagship 2 weeks ago as part of a coerced labor detail. During that time, I identified vulnerabilities in their command network and developed an exploit. When the invasion began, I activated the exploit and took control of their fleet. I used the threat of mutual destruction to force a withdrawal." Amari stared at her. "You took control of their fleet?" "Yes, ma'am." "Alone?" "Yes, ma'am." Amari's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "And they just let you walk away?" "I made a deal. I released control in exchange for safe passage, and I made Commander Zoltar broadcast a message to his fleet admitting what happened." Amari exhaled slowly. "That's going to make waves. The Drexian Admiralty doesn't take humiliation lightly." "Neither do we," Elara said quietly. Amari studied her for a long moment, then she nodded. "You did good, Corporal, damn good, but this isn't over. The Drexians will be back, and next time they'll be ready for tricks like yours. Then we'd better have new tricks." Amari's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Get some rest. We'll debrief you fully in the morning, and Corporal, thank you. You saved a lot of lives today." Elara nodded, too tired to say more. She saluted and left the command center, escorted by the Marines to a small guest quarters. The room was sparse. A bed, a desk, a narrow window overlooking Earth. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared out at the planet below. Somewhere out there, Zoltar was nursing his wounds, planning his next move. The Drexian Admiralty was likely convening an emergency session, debating how to respond. And Earth's governments were probably scrambling to figure out what this all meant. But for now, in this quiet room, Elara allowed herself a moment of peace. She lay back on the bed, her eyes drifting closed. She'd bought humanity time. What they did with it was up to them. 3 weeks later, Elara stood in a small auditorium at the Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva. The room was packed. Military brass, government officials, journalists with cameras trained on the podium. She wore her dress uniform, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar after years of coveralls and field gear. A medal hung on her chest, newly minted, its metal still bright. General Amari stood beside her, speaking into a microphone. "Corporal Voss's actions aboard the Drexian flagship represent the highest standards of courage and ingenuity. She faced overwhelming odds, operated with zero support, and achieved a strategic victory that averted planetary catastrophe. It is my honor to present her with the Solar Defense Cross, the highest commendation we can bestow." Applause filled the room. Elara stepped forward and accepted the medal, her hand steady now, her exhaustion replaced by a quiet resolve. She looked out at the crowd and saw faces filled with gratitude, pride, and something else: hope. When the ceremony ended, Elara slipped away from the reception and found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She leaned against the railing and breathed in the cool evening air. Footsteps approached. She turned to see a young officer, a lieutenant with close-cropped hair and bright eyes. He saluted. "Corporal Voss, I wanted to say thank you. My sister lives in Sao Paulo. If you hadn't done what you did," he trailed off, his voice thick. Elara nodded. "I'm glad she's safe." The lieutenant hesitated, then asked, "Do you think they'll come back?" "Yes," Elara said honestly. "But next time we'll be ready." He smiled, a fragile, hopeful thing, and saluted again before walking away. Elara watched him go, then turned back to the city. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, the Drexian armada was regrouping. Zoltar was still alive, his reputation bruised but not broken, and the Admiralty was undoubtedly planning their next move. But humanity had learned something that day. They'd learned that they could fight back, even against impossible odds. They'd learned that one person, in the right place at the right time, could change everything. Elara pulled out her data pad and scrolled through the messages that had flooded in over the past weeks. Offers of new assignments, requests for interviews, messages from strangers thanking her. She ignored most of them, but one caught her eye, a brief note from an unknown sender. It read, "You earned your place in the stars, Corporal. Do not waste it." No signature, no origin trace. But Elara knew who it was from. She deleted the message and pocketed the data pad. Then she looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. The universe was vast, dangerous, and full of enemies, but it was also full of possibilities. And Elara Voss intended to see them all.